Heavens, that's fine.
That's good for hard of hearing like me.
Cotton to put on the table.
And I'm down to one hearing aid.
We'll
tonight.
try this.
Right, sounds like it's coming from
I
above.
think this, yeah, I think the speaker's
Okay.
in our projector somehow, so we'll figure it out as we go. I do have the volume control. But with that, we
So
can
you
get
ready?
started on the agenda.
All right, and I'll call a meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. We have a quorum and we can therefore do business. The first item of which for us tonight is the minutes of April 10th.
John, I'll move we approve.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second,
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion with respect to the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it and the April 10th minutes are approved. Item 2 is concrete repair determination of deficiencies.
Exactly, and I don't see that Tom Weber was able to join us tonight, so I'll just pick up. This is an annual thing, so every year we have staff, Tom Weber in this case, walk through about 1/8 of the city, but he also has notes from folks who have called in or things he's heard about of special sort of remote areas, we call them. And then he packages that up, gets bids out. So we do have a bid out already. Separately in statute, the committee has to determine that there are deficiencies. So Tom makes a list and a map for us. And then annually, after we've determined there are deficiencies, he can send a letter out to folks, let them know that either they're going to have to fix the sidewalk areas, or we will, that it's assessed.
Are the spots on the map that are red, are those the remote areas?
I
Right.
believe those are the
Okay.
remote areas.
That's what I took it to be.
Yeah.
So all we need to do tonight is determine that there are deficiencies. We don't have a bid to deal with tonight.
Correct. We've already awarded the bid to JB
Oh,
Johnson.
okay.
So we know what the price is.
Okay.
and where the scope is. Pending no surprises with any of this, that'll go forward.
All right. Seems to
So
be-
yeah, this is just that the committee then determines the need for corrective action in areas with deficient sidewalk. And per the, let's say, per the properties listed on the project spreadsheet.
Okay.
Which I can go to.
I make a motion that we approve the concrete repair deficiencies as defined in area 1 and in some of the other ones on the areas.
How are people, like, if someone were to notice a problem, what's the best way for them to contact the city? Is it through the form on the website or is it an email in or?
Or an email or a phone call.
Okay.
It all kind of gets funneled to Tom either
Okay.
way.
You know, I guess the only question I have is, doesn't it get pretty expensive to do these onesies? You know, I mean, we got one way out in Deming Way, we got one on Canterbury Circle.
Within. Back up to
Are
the
they
map first.
really that bad that they need to be done outside their normal area?
They're usually crushed, cracked, tripping hazards, the kinds of things that's, gonna cause somebody a problem. We don't want to wait 3 years to fix it. It's usually those kinds of things. If it's a, half-inch gap or something, I'm not gonna get too wrapped up in that. But even within here, they're pretty used to having to drive from one spot to the next.
Yeah.
It's not like there's 600 feet of sidewalk. It's all one
Yeah,
square here
yeah,
and two
okay.
there.
Separated quite a bit, yeah.
Once they get their stuff thrown onto a trailer, whether they drive down here, doesn't matter too much. What they get more upset about is if we suddenly start adding a bunch of this remote work, then it gets a little bit hairier.
All right, so
Okay.
Carl made a motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing-
Sorry,
Okay.
just another question. So we don't see the bid come back? Explain to me what happens now.
What's the
So
big
we
cut?
don't, when you've already got the bid, we're just approving the work to happen, and this is all included in the budget from this last year.
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
part of the state statute. I mean, there's a whole process.
Okay.
That we determine these things are actually deficient, and then the homeowners get a letter.
Okay,
They've already got pink dots out there for the most part, so they know to call, like, hey, what's going on with this? You know, but
okay,
they'll get an official notice, and I think we normally try to give them 3 weekends. In which to, you know, find somebody to take care of it, or just let us do.
okay.
For the record, I got the postcard to let me know that they're coming in the neighborhood.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
May I ask a question about that, please?
Yeah,
Sure.
I am Lisa Haniro, Alder for District 6, and it's my district.
and
Yeah.
future member.
Yeah.
of
And
the
future
Public
member.
Works Committee.
When I got a yellow postcard too, and when I got it, the sticker that the post office needs to process the postcard covered up the line that said, if you have any questions, call or email. Which, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this must have been a mistake on the card, and the city covered it up. And when I peeled it off, I thought, okay.
There's the
So,
important.
so I just mentioned that next time when the cards go out, that needs to be bumped up like a half an inch so that text doesn't
Because
get.
they put it on the print
It was
side, not on the address side.
Right.
So we need a
Yeah,
bigger buffer. on
It
the
was
bottom.
exactly on my husband's gonna send a picture. I meant to bring it tonight, but it's exactly over the paragraph that says if you have any questions.
Oh, handy.
Yeah.
Keep balls down.
Sure.
All right.
Was
any-
yours covered too, Don?
What's that?
Coincidentally, was yours covered too?
No.
The contact info?
No, mine was fine, and I threw it away because I said, well, I got perfect sidewalks, so I'm not worrying this year. Whereas 6 years ago, I got 7 years ago, I got dinged.
Gotcha.
This year.
Well, that's good to know though. Lisa. Need a bigger bottom.
Yeah, mine was fine.
Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have determined deficiencies and can proceed accordingly. Item 3 is electric vehicle charging stations, agreement for planning, design, and construction engineering services.
Just back to where we were. Okay. Well, let me go back to Jen just for the overview. And Kelly Hilliard's with us this evening, and she authored an RFP, sent it out to 4 area companies. We got 2 responses. I think one of the companies said that their workload just wouldn't allow them to submit a proposal right now. So of the 2 proposals that we have, they're written pretty differently. And they have, I think, internally some idea of different hours and certainly different fee structure.
4-1?
I'm sorry.
4-1?
One,
Yeah. And so I, you know, what I didn't see was anything that struck me like there was a misunderstanding. You know, it seemed like they both kind of got it, that we want to do some high level planning for what are our EV needs across 3 sites. And spec out and put together a bid package for at least 1 EV charger at each of those 3 sites. And oversee the construction. So they both seem to get that. They just had a different idea, I think, internally, how much effort that would take.
Except that one of them did not quote the construction observation.
That
Ramaker did not.
they didn't include phase C in their.
I didn't,
No.
I mean, I read their scope of work that they defined, and I didn't see that.
I think you're correct. In a sense with Ramaker.
Did your RFP define scope of work? In
It
detail?
did. Yeah, it did. And they called me when they were submitting it and said that they felt like the construction management scope was way overkill, and HGA also told me they thought that it was excessive. And so they did say that they could prepare the bid documents, the specifications for the bid documents, and could help with, coming on site, making sure that the hired contractor builds the project as it's designed. And they felt like with a project this small, with the chargers going in at the 3 spots, that they would not have any trouble doing that for the amount of work it would take and the price that they were offering. Their proposal was just so much less that when I talked to Brad Hopwood and Brian Gebhardt about it, we decided to meet with Rainmaker to make sure that they truly understood what we were wanting, because the price differences were so different between HGA and Rainmaker. And I do think HGA really understands the project. But we were hoping that there could be a gap that Rainmaker could fill to make sure that they were doing all that we wanted them to do. And during that meeting, we felt confident that they could, and they seemed to understand what we were wanting to do.
Well, they show construction administration and observation on the schedule, but there's not an itemized number.
Right, there's not a fee for it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I must have read that into it then, assuming that they understood the RFP and that they accounted for there
Right.
being a phase.
So if you take
two.
the $35,000 of construction observation now for the HGA one, there's a difference between 63,000 and 25,000. So that's a pretty big range. I've not seen something like that before.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just an assumption of a lot of extra hours, or if Rainmaker's just trying to get more into this with us, knowing that there's future work coming. You know, that's hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Did you have a sense for anything, Kelly, about why they were different?
Well, I was really puzzled. I don't have a lot of experience with bids and these types of things yet, but was talking to Brad, and he said he sees this all the time with contractors who are firms that are really busy. They just, maybe they charge more and hope they get it, but if they don't, that's, they just bid it high because they're already so busy. Yeah, I mean, that might be the case. They didn't say that, so I'm not trying to put words in their mouth about that. I really trust both firms. We work with HG on a number of projects, and they're amazing and fabulous to work with. This just seemed like such a different price that Brad and Brian felt like they wanted to go with Rainmaker as well. So really, I want to trust Brad and Brian, since they have the technical more the technical background in this and know what they need. They were able to ask Rainmaker questions when we met with them, and they seemed that they had their questions answered.
So if Rainmaker gave us no price for construction, admin and observation, and we're gonna need some services, we're gonna write that into the agreement that we're gonna need some. Obviously, the electrical inspector is going to have to do some of that too, from an inspection point of view. This consultant is not going to be, but we'll want to know stuff's in the right spot and it's the right thing. Stuff the electrical inspector won't be. Are they gonna put a price in on that then, or how are we going to resolve?
I'm not sure. I mean, have you ever dealt with a situation where you work it out in the agreement side? Or, I mean, we talked to them about this, and I think they felt like having someone on site doing a lot of observation just wasn't really the type of project this was, that when you draw out how to install one EV charging station, that it doesn't take much observation.
I don't think it's going to be heavy on the observation, but there are going to be some. It's maybe one site visit per location. You know what I mean? Just to make sure that's what we wanted. That's where we wanted it. The electrical inspector makes sure that the wiring's right and the connections are right. But we want to know that we got the the right box and that it's in the right spot.
So do we have a total estimated construction budget for this?
The total budget is $100,000. So
Oh.
it includes this consultant plus the construction amount.
So the other one was essentially spending our entire budget on just engineering.
And that would,
It's HGH price.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, did you look at their rates?
No, when I saw the huge number, I thought they just missed something or
Yeah,
overthought this thing. I
but
mean,
I mean, they're charging. You know, for their lead project manager, they're charging 326 an hour. Which is, I mean. I haven't really done this in 15 years, but I don't think it's gone up that much.
I retired 10 years ago. It's like I'd have been around 2.25, but I tried not to manage it. It's too expensive. We'd never get any work. So yeah, that seems high. And this type of project, the most difficult thing is figuring out where the service is going to come from. I mean, it's easy to put a pedestal in. There it is, fire it up.
Right,
So, okay, how do we get power to it? And how do we make sure it plans for the future?
it's that longer term.
Yeah, the longer term thing, which, so I think the 25,000 is. I mean, my God, that's a huge fee for $100,000 project.
yeah. Do they have to tie, I assume on two of these, they're gonna tie into the building system?
Do you know offhand, Kelly, if that's already been determined?
No, they haven't determined that. That's part of what we really wanted to make sure that when they did go to each site to do the initial survey or analysis, that they make sure that they understand how it's going to be put in now, but also that it fits into a larger 5 to 10 year build out where we put in more stations eventually. We just don't want to rush and put in a station here, a station there, and then have to rip it out or trench differently or wire it differently later when we put 5 more in. So they did add that into the service, and they understand that that's really what we're wanting, is an evaluation of each site and some advice on how to build this out. And I think they understand that there might be flexibility in if they get to the Terrace Avenue parking lot and decide really you would only need level 1 chargers here for the needs at this parking lot, then they would adjust that. I think we just don't know much about what we want because we don't understand it yet. And so we need someone to come in and do the evaluations and help us work that out.
I have a question about the Terrace Avenue site. How is this going to mesh with the plans such as they are for the downtown campus or whatever? Isn't that likely at some point in the relatively near future, that whole parking lot to get ripped up and reconfigured and possibly have a building on it instead of just a parking lot?
It's conceivable, I think there's a lot with that that's still kind of up in the air.
Can you go to the map really quick? Because I'm thinking that where I thought the Terrace Avenue was gonna go is not part of that parking lot that might get ripped up.
The sidewalk, man.
We're just where the Terrace Avenue.
Can I ask a question?
No, scroll down to Raymaker's third proposal page. Right
Oh,
there.
so specific diagram.
Oh, okay. Okay, that was
So-
different. than I
So
was
most of our city vehicles are parked in this far southeast corner. Probably would continue to be unless there's some driving reason from an electrical perspective. We have a charge point here already. To move it someplace else, that would still be in the cards, but I've typically seen stuff most talked about like in the library side, north of
Yeah.
the tracks, not so much south of the
And
tracks.
even that lot, you wonder, why are we doing that in that lot?
Oh, I think it's just because that's where we park the city vehicles for
Okay.
admin staff.
Okay.
So is the existing one that's there, that's going to remain, or is that going to be taken out?
This is not ours. This is, well, it used to be MG&E's, but it says Charge Point now, so maybe they sold that off.
Oh,
Yeah, but that's not us.
okay.
So we need a motion to recommend this to the,
It would be to hire a consultant And I had drafted this with limited fee, but we might need to put some flexibility in there, write it into the agreement before it gets to finance committee and common council with a different limiting fee. They're gonna need probably a couple hours per site anyway, just to look at stuff. That's not gonna be just free.
So,
Now, we don't maybe necessarily need all these, what they call additional services. In which
yeah,
case there would be money within that $25,000.
like
To do
site
some
survey,
observation
like
instead of-
site survey, do you have
Right?
decent information on that?
We have pretty good information, good enough, I think, to figure out where to put an electric box.
They just need a map to draw on, really,
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
yeah.
so I had already included all of these optional costs, just in case we need them, but if we don't, that should be enough for a few site
Yeah,
visits.
I mean, you know, the transformer distribution panel installation design, I mean, I would think that would be necessary,
Yeah, that's good.
especially if you're tying into the existing building.
It almost seems like that's not enough.
I mean,
It's a little bit I know.
Well, they came up with these numbers, right? These are
Yeah.
the numbers, so I mean,
You gotta trust what they're showing you, right?
it's gonna be the case and you could. Just throwing it on the table, you could make an emotion that. We accept this proposal as is, understanding that there may be a adjustment in the future related to construction services. If needed. If it doesn't fall within the not to exceed number.
Yeah, right, because some of this we might not. have.
I mean, why write it now into the motion?
Rainmaker said they were quoting construction, observation and administration.
Yeah.
But they just didn't itemize it. I mean, they said in their up above and the services provided that
It's
they were
there.
gonna provide their construction and administration.
AC.
Well, this is listed under.
no, that's a schedule.
Okay, civil site project.
Right, so I think I kind of read that into it too, like, oh, they're
Yeah.
figuring out.
They're not
schedule
quoting,
Phase Cs in.
they're,
here, but-
that's their proposed schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't do the work. Necessarily of construction.
But I think they're right, it's not gonna take a ton of time, and if we
No.
do those, all the alternate services, that probably pays for a few hours. It's about what it should take to say, yep, this
Right.
is what we wanted and where we wanted it.
Well, they're gonna have to do submittals.
Yeah.
The contractor's gonna want approval on the submittals.
Yep.
Just construction services. He's gonna have questions, they're gonna have to answer.
Likely.
Yeah,
Well, then they can come back with a supplemental proposal for additional money. That's happened many times.
If it's out of scope, right,
Yeah.
so it would be better, I guess, if they could define the scope.
but,
Include that.
but I think what you're suggesting is that we give them a contract that has that work in it. And put this $25,000 number in the contract or whatever number,
Yeah.
so it would be included as a scope.
I think we'd have to, yeah, chat with them a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna be 24/5 or if it's gonna
Right.
have to be then a different.
I'm just
number to
rounding it
include
off at
that.
25. The total is 24.
So do you want a motion to
450.
be able to go over? Is that what you're?
You add all the extra
Okay.
services.
To prepare an agreement. anyway.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
much more do you think?
well, I don't know. I think we'd have to talk with them.
Okay, so you don't wanna go in with a number, you wanna talk to them first.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to then come back here or just go to the finance committee with that.
I think we could just go to the finance committee. I mean, I can't imagine it's gonna
Come
come
back.
back $400
No.
a site.
Yeah, I think you could just go ahead and,
You
I-
send
if
$100
you
an
guys wanna
hour
see it
guy out
again.
there. You're not gonna send your $200 an hour guy out there
Well, let's hope not.
to observe this construction.
do you guys want it to come back? That's something. that-
Can we make the motion not to exceed 30,000 final number to be negotiated with engineering?
We could do.
I like that, I like that.
Why don't we do it that way? I'll make that motion.
I will
We
second
submit
that.
to council and finance, assuming attorney's approval, to negotiate a contract based on the scope of services with a not to exceed fee of $30,000. Final number to be negotiated with engineering to include construction services.
Okay,
Sorry for my long.
No, I'm glad you spelled it all out. That's exactly where I had it in my head though, so I think I'm happy to second that.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that's what we will recommend to the Finance Committee and the council. All right.
Sir, infamous wall.
Next item is the infamous retaining wall, Waupun Wall.
Feels pretty infamous to me.
No, it was quite, yeah, I know. I understand.
It's maybe a little easier to see anyway. So this is Mendota Avenue, right along the south. Is where that retaining wall is with a fence on top of it. The proposal. You see it here as a tracing area. The proposal is to build a different kind of landscape wall that sort of divides. Here it looks like. But well outside the right of way for the most part. It looks like it may, just touch it. And so you have a quote already, I guess it would be from Bruce Company to do all of this backyard landscaping, change that all out. And the discussion at the last meeting was, well, could the city contribute part of that cost in rebuilding the region? So I had a chat with our assistant city attorney and included those comments in the agenda packet here. He was supportive of the city doing that. We've not done this before. But in a sense that if we had an agreement with Petzolds for long-term maintenance of something that would support this sidewalk, but on your property. Now, whether that's just a fill slope plus retaining wall, that way, long-term, if you get sick and tired of a retaining wall or it falls apart and it just turns into an earthen slope, so what?
As long as it's supporting the sidewalk.
Doesn't hurt the public at all. As long as you hold the sidewalk up, long-term interests are still secured. So he was fine with that. I also included in the staff comments then the most recent cost estimate we had from Tom Weber based on recent pricing for retaining walls that we built and sidewalk on this year's prices. And then we just put in a couple $1,000s as a fence allowance, whether we hire a fence company or have our own crew do it. But that totaled up to $12,000. If we were to rebuild this retaining wall in the right of way and then shift the sidewalk over a little bit to avoid it, which wouldn't be anyone's first choice, but right now it was built behind the sidewalk in private property. Regardless of how that got built, and we haven't really pinned it down. We're assuming it's bubble. It's, I think, a fair assumption. So to replace that, we would either then need an easement of some sort if we wanted to build it back on private property as a public wall. We certainly should have gotten an easement, but we don't have it I'm aware of. Or we would rebuild it out in the right of way and shift the side. So we do have, we previously have offered to property owners, either we'll take the retaining wall out and slope your yard back for you, or rebuild the retaining wall. This would introduce a third option, and to say, we'll give you money to either slope your yard back or build a retaining wall of whatever design you choose, as long as it holds the sidewalk up.
For us, this third wall is or this third choice, I should say, aids our property value in that right now the top part of that picture is our house. And if there wasn't a window right there on that wall, you could almost reach your hand out and high five everyone that walks by on the sidewalk. It's really
That
close.
sounds perfect.
It's really cool. However, when you're sitting at dinner, sometimes you might not want all of your neighbors to see every thing that is happening. And so to bump that out gives you a place where you can plant, because right now you can't plant anything there with the drop off of the wall. Nothing quite works. So this enables us to put some natural plantings and trees and bushes and grasses and stuff like that that will just serve as a little privacy for that. So we are excited at the thought of that, of being able to fix two things with one plan.
This plan, the other issue that I have with this is it doesn't have a fence. I mean, that I understand that there's no fence.
My understanding is that it does not need a fence because the edge of the sidewalk has several feet of space there off to the left of it. So that in terms of public safety, there's a big buffer there.
The drop off changes throughout the length of it closer to the house. It's more like this, and at the southern end, it's all even.
Do you know, is this elevation here at top of wall or bottom of wall? This 9678?
That would be down from that would be 2 feet. The top of the wall would be 2 feet down from the sidewalk.
So it's sloping down to.
Oh, so this is a 2-foot drop and then it nominally goes down to the grade
Pretty big
in the
drop.
backyard.
Well, actually, I don't know.
Not sure either, but I do feel reasonably comfortable. It's gotta be another 5 feet off. if not one day.
It looks like the retaining wall is pretty much level at the 96 or level. I mean, 96.3 at one point. Other than
This is 96.4, so this seems like it should be a bottom of wall, not a top of wall, otherwise. This would be underground.
and the sidewalk is in. That's
The highest part of the wall is the part that's on the top of the picture, and that's where the wall kind of splits. And so you get like a terrace effect there,
Mhm.
where the part on the right is up at sidewalk level, and then the next one is down a step. I don't know how far that is exactly, but that takes care of a lot of the height is at that end.
Yeah, it kind of feels like these might be. bottom of
Existing.
Wall elevation.
Yeah. Existing grade, maybe.
Yeah,
It could be that too.
I know that big circle up there, that's where the one on the top, they suggested some kind of little tree there.
Japanese emperor one maybe.
Yeah.
So
it's-
if that
it's
gives you a
like-
sense of space, like a tree will fit there.
Yeah, well, and this sidewalk should be 4 feet wide. So it's kind of gives you a sense too that this is 5 feet off the sidewalk edge.
Mhm.
I know I have in my front yard too. It seems to be the only one on the block. There's a retaining wall in the front yard. Near the sidewalk, it's about 1.5 feet away and it's about 3 feet tall. Everybody else sloped it up. Mine's a private wall, so.
There's a lot of retaining walls on your street. I drove by today. You've got a couple down, what is it, Mendota? Is that the street?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're-
there's
you've got-
several along
There's
there.
several along there. One of them that looks like it's in really bad shape.
One's that rough, like just rocks stuck in the
Yeah,
wall.
yeah.
And it stayed together pretty well. And then the next one down, they just rebuilt in the last year or two, because it was like a nice stacked
Yeah, it is a nice.
rectangular blocks and they were all getting loose. That one's redone. Can't remember if there's one more past that or not.
I think that was just the two. You have some pretty sloped yards, but yeah.
John, I'm gonna go with those are all existing grade,
Yeah,
those grade markers.
I would agree.
Looks like somebody's parked a total stationing there and shot it and said, okay, this is what it is.
So then we don't know what the wall.
We do not know what the wall height is gonna be, but,
I mean, we know it's 3 feet then from here to.
yep,
Which. So it's not a heck of a lot. 4 feet off, there's a 2 foot drop. Better.
And I'm hoping there'll be lots of things growing there that would
Discourage people.
discourage people from walking through.
Yeah, but you can
So,
still,
is that what you're
people can
planning?
still fall in there.
So you're planning like
I'm
bushes
thinking-
or something
Yeah.
along the top, okay, so like
Yeah.
a substantial height?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think they're breaking it down from a 4 foot drop to a pair
Yeah.
of 2 foot drops.
So I'm thinking of the Wisconsin Telephone Building and it now holds a restaurant called Sushi Red. It's right off the square. When that was originally designed, there was a pond, a water feature right off the sidewalk. And there was a wall that separated the sidewalk from the pond. And a blind person still managed to fall in. Walking down the sidewalk with a cane. So, I mean, I don't know when you say there's no fence required. I don't know where that requirement comes from. I don't know of any code really defines, if it was inside a building, it would be required to be a fence. I don't know of the codes on the outside of it.
If the grade is brought up to the sidewalk level, which is what they're doing with the wall,
Yeah,
it's not an issue. It's like your sidewalk on the grass next to you,
Yeah,
like
right.
everyone else.
but it's a gradual.
So it's a gradual slope, if that at all, and I'm guessing, I don't know what Bruce is charging, but I would imagine that they're trying to bring that grade up to the sidewalk on the, call it right side of the wall there. There's no step off the sidewalk down.
Right,
It's same level,
right.
so that it's not a danger, say. Unless that soil settles, and that's something you'll have to watch.
Yeah, I'm not good at reading all these things, but my understanding is that from the sidewalk to the ground that's right next to the sidewalk would be level, so that that's not a fall the way it is right now. That the stepping off is whatever stones, those big round stones that are bordering the left side of it, like that's where the drop is gonna be.
Yeah.
And that's some feet away from the sidewalk. So that theoretically that should make passengers on the sidewalk or pedestrians, I guess that's the right word, have a safe space.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we can't have a vertical drop at the edge of the sidewalk, someone will break.
Right.
behind.
Right,
They're calling for plantings with screen, for screening with brown wood mulch in this area. Now, that won't be dead level, it'll have some slope down, toward the wall, but it wouldn't necessarily be steep. I
Might
wouldn't
not.
expect it to be steep.
if it's very steep, all the mulch is just gonna.
Yeah,
So
you'll be picking
that'd
it up.
Really
every spring.
annoying.
Oh. So I think this will be relatively flat with some grade toward the wall. And then a drop off at the. But
Yeah.
that drop off might be a couple of feet. It's the way it's looking. So that seems reasonable. I would think that that's far enough away and someone has to get through a landscaped area that's intended for screening. To be able to step off the edge of the wall if that's what ends up happening. That seems a reasonable risk to another fence.
So walk me through a little bit about how we found out that the city owned the wall. And do we anticipate, I know it took like 3 or 4 years, right, for you guys to figure that out, or quite a few?
You guys did a pretty good job
I
finding
think
it.
it was in winter, maybe that.
Oh, I thought it was like last year.
It's over the course of the last year. I don't remember the dates exactly, but we knew the wall was falling. And so at first we thought like, oh my gosh, we have to replace this wall. And then a friend looked at it who is a soils engineer and he's like, I'd call the city first. I'm like, okay, so we called the city, talked to Tom Weber, and he's like, I don't have anything on that. So I think it's yours. And then another person who's a civil engineer looked at it and said, No, I think you should call him back. That really looks like a city wall. And so I
Somebody
called
would think
Tom
so.
back again and he did some more digging and found, he said, a single piece of paper in a file somewhere that looked like they had to add in a wall during construction. Is that the copy of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, that's the only thing that I've got, but it looks plausible that it's the city's wall.
Yeah, so there was.
And that, yeah, I remember seeing that.
To this contract in 1967, and everything we have to go on says somebody added 35 feet of retaining wall. We paid for 47, so somebody made it slightly longer than we intended.
And 47 is about the length of our wall.
Yeah, so that's about what's going on, and the stations that are referenced are right where it says existing garage.
Mhm.
So it says there was an existing wall from the corner of the house. I'm assuming this is the corner of the house because it doesn't make sense as a wall, and that this would have been the wall that went out toward the street. And that we intended to build this 35 feet of wall that turned into building 47 feet of wall, where there had been a garage.
There's no garage there now, but there is still the driveway apron, so you can
Mhm.
kind of locate
Yeah.
where it goes.
Of course, my whole point is, I'm just wondering if there's anything else out there like this, that, you know,
We
like,
occasionally run into this
Yeah.
where somebody says, hey, are you sure that's not public? And often we don't, and we have to
Yeah.
try to decide, well, why is it there? It feels to me most likely that this is here in conjunction with the road project because we widened the road and had a sidewalk and needed some fill to do that without building the sidewalk lower than the road, in which case we probably added that.
I'm nervous about the precedent, but I understand. I appreciate the third option that we are creating here. An interesting options.
I think it's good, actually.
Well, Sean, I thought you
It's gonna come
said,
back to haunt us.
I thought you said at the last meeting that there were some similar situations that the city had done in the past on other walls. So not necessarily a precedent if there are already some out there.
And I thought. it was
Along
that.
University Avenue, we were pretty sure those were our walls.
Yes.
Even if they were in the county's right of way. But we run into that in a few other places. It's mostly because of the road. But for whatever odd reason, it wasn't built in. That happened. As if somebody wrote it down and said, hey, this is a public wall. Instead of this is a wall.
All right, committee, further questions, comments?
So what do we need for action? Anything at this point?
I think it would be good to give guidance if, I mean, right now, the city hasn't allocated any funding whatsoever to either rebuild the wall ourselves or make a contribution to Petzl's to implement this plan, and we would just contribute what we would otherwise have spent on a wall.
So
Even
a
if it were
motion
relocated.
to proceed with contribution in aid of their construction based on the bids from Bruce Company to the amount that we would normally spend on the wall.
Yeah,
with
so I
with a caveat about negotiating a agreement.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that
Does the motion need to include that dollar amount?
I think it should, right, so that it would include that it's contingent upon the city allocating some funds, all of this. Then that we would draft an agreement whereby you would build some improvement that laterally supports the sidewalk in perpetuity, whether that's a fill slope or retaining wall, doesn't matter to me. It's a private improvement that takes care of our issue. That's the public purpose we would be funding. And that, yeah, it would be in the form of an agreement that's satisfactory to the city attorney.
how about we just make a motion to engineering to work on an agreement? to
Yeah.
contribute to the construction of their plan.
We can do that. I mean, that's
With an amount.
essentially what it would be is,
Our amount not to exceed, what is it, 9,200 or is it $12,000?
the way we figured it, it was $12,000 if we rebuilt our wall in the
Okay,
right of way.
So it'd be 12,000.
And that would come out of next year's budget?
Well, that would all be subject to some allocation of funding, this whole thing. So
Right.
whether you write the agreement now and wait for money or identify money and then draft an
Well, I
agreement.
think we make a recommendation to the finance committee that they
Yeah.
figure out a way to finance it.
Yeah.
And negotiate a contract.
And it is somewhat critical at this point.
I think you wanted to get that built this year, is that?
It's failing enough that I think one side of the sidewalk is probably at least an inch lower than the other, so we're
So,
starting
yeah.
to,
So it's
starting to
critical.
set up a slide into the fence.
Oh, yeah, and our $12,000 included building that sidewalk section, that 47 or 50 feet of sidewalk figured out,
Okay.
so. I'm not saying you have to replace all the sidewalk, but whatever deficiencies.
There's at least
there
2
are
squares.
Should be included in that. And if the contractor wrecks some additional while building it, it wouldn't be the first time ever that's happened. But our cost estimate included that whole stretch. As if we were just gonna replace it.
Can I just make a comment? I don't really see this as the finance committee's responsibility to figure out how to pay for it this year. I think if it needs to be paid for this year, it's Public Works' responsibility to recommend something to the finance committee. Because it's obviously gonna have to get balanced by something not happening that you did have budget for.
Yeah, we often propose stuff when we can identify any sort of funding scheme, but it's not for us, Public Works or staff of Public Works, to identify which is a higher priority. You know, so if we recommend something to the finance committee, it's still their purview to say, yeah, we agree, that's a higher priority.
So Sean, I have one question too. The
Go ahead.
12,000.
Oh, sorry, Don. What we wouldn't want to hand to the finance committee is a blank piece of paper that says, good luck, figure it out. That's,
Sean, if the $12,000 includes the sidewalk,
yes.
just mean the sidewalk. Are you guys-
Well, with our we just did a cost estimate.
I know.
We didn't hire anybody, but that's the JB Johnson price for 2023 sidewalk.
Okay, so, but who would be doing the site
Well,
if it's
Yeah.
on city property?
if we pay the $12,000, that would be part of your contractor's scope of work, is any deficient sidewalk gets replaced.
So then it'd be up to us to hire who we would want to do for that sidewalk, because you'd already contributed towards it.
And it becomes a little bit circular, right? Whether we paid JB Johnson on your behalf, or we give you the money to rebuild the sidewalk that we would otherwise have had to rebuild. JB Johnson does the work and we assessed you. All you're doing is using our money to rebuild.
So is your estimate 9,200 for the wall and then 2,000 for the fencing? So that's 11,200.
I was 7,200 for the wall plus the 2,000 allowance for fencing. That totaled up to a subtotal of
The
9,200.
9,200 includes the fence.
And then we added, I think it was like
2,800
for
so
sidewalk, a couple hundred square feet.
Yeah. 50 feet by 4 feet.
So total of 12,000, but that includes the sidewalk.
Yeah, that would be a wall fence inside.
So there is gonna be fence installed along.
No fence.
No
That's
fence?
what we would build if we were.
If you were-
Because we would have the drop off.
Yeah.
Right next to the sidewalk. If we rebuilt.
Cause there's a fence there right now.
There is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is,
Sort of.
yeah.
seriously ugly fence.
It's falling.
Which is,
Plus it's ugly.
It is really-
And it's a popular,
oh, that's a great thing.
there's at least 15 dogs by every day, plus people.
Come to look to see what you're having for dinner.
Sometimes.
Exactly.
Gotta be careful what I say.
Breakfast.
I don't cook enough for everybody, though. Sorry.
So anyway, yeah, that would get us to drafting an agreement that we could talk about internally. City attorney and with you, once we reach agreement on that, if we can identify a funding source to finance committee to say yes or no, or something different, then it could go to the common council.
I'm gonna use this as a learning opportunity as my step onto finance. So would finance want a contract in hand? Like, how does that work? Like, is it better to go to finance with a contract? Is it better to find allocation and then pursue a contract?
I think, and I chair the finance committee, which is what Kendra's saying. I would want to approve the concept first
Yeah,
before you go to the trouble of writing a contract.
making it, okay.
So why don't we make a motion to approve the concept and to develop a contract?
Well, and then we'll refer it to finance.
Refer the concept to finance.
Okay,
Finance will
Yeah.
make a decision, and if finance approves, then Sean.
Then you
Yeah,
know,
based on
okay.
recommendation from Public Works on, do we find a way to allocate it, where we can be allocated from this year?
And I'm assuming that would go to both finance committee and the common council to identify funding.
If it's reallocation from this year's budget, does it have to go to common council or can it just go to finance?
It's a good question. I know if
They,
it's
the
a
council would
decrease-
be the ones
Yeah.
redoing the budget,
Okay.
so I'd hate to get all the way up to the end and then have the council say, well, no one asked us.
true.
Yeah, I think council would want to weigh in on it because
And
it
they'll
is
want to approve the
precedent
contract
setting in
also.
nature.
For the mayor to sign.
Well, after we're done writing it.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
I think that's a fair
Yeah.
point. If we can identify funding first, then people are happy.
I do have a question about the fence, and I might as well ask it now because I'll ask it next Tuesday otherwise. And that is, so there is no fence. There is a picket fence in the plan, but not along this wall.
Yeah,
Right. Okay, and so my question then to Sean is, why would we include the $2,000 fence allowance if the finished product isn't gonna include a fence?
Well, I was looking at
We
this
would-
from the perspective of what are our costs saved, right? If we built a wall right along the edge of the sidewalk, we would put a fence there. We don't want a 2 or 3 foot drop off right next to the sidewalk. I think 5, 6, 8 feet away, that's it through landscaping, that's at least a fair risk, but I don't think right next to the sidewalk would be a fair risk.
And the design is going to make a fence unnecessary, is what you're saying.
Yes.
If you'd like to contribute more toward the new design, that would be okay too.
Well, no, I was just, yeah, like I said, it seems to me that if we're basing our contribution on what we would pay to do similar work, not similar work, but do what the city needs done.
Replace
Yeah.
basically what's there.
That would, yeah, and that would probably be a higher cost than if we just had permission to grade out a slope, but we don't have permission for that. So it's not a viable option.
Which is where we're coming from in the first place. Like, if the city was gonna just replace this, it would cost X amount. And so we would like that amount. But we're gonna use it differently
Mhm.
so that we meet. our
Sure,
other
oh
needs.
no, I
Yeah.
get that, but you do understand that there are other places throughout the city where this might come up.
Yeah.
Once the precedent is set.
Oh, there almost certainly, there have been, and there almost certainly will be. In the future.
all right, so where are we with? I'm still baffled on what kind of a motion I would make.
Yeah, so this would be.
Make a motion for engineering to proceed in developing a contract.
Well, contingent upon finance committee and council.
Approving the concept.
So that
Approving
means we
funding
go
for the
to finance
concept.
committee and council for approval of the concept. How about that? And leave it at that at this point.
Well,
Okay.
then we could go ahead and make the agreement, I think.
Yeah, once
Bring
we have
that back to
approval.
the finance
Yeah.
committee and the council.
Yeah, because an agreement is part of that concept. Did my motion make any sense there? You can.
It will have by tomorrow.
After he spends a couple of days rewriting it.
this is why you vote the minutes after.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for saving my face.
And I will second the motion.
All right, so then we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and Sean, you can set to work drafting. something.
Yeah, we'll see it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm gonna move the meeting announcements. That was the last item.
All
on the
right.
agenda.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned, I guess, until May 8th.
Yeah, and so May 8th now should then be the Armentor Street open house prior to the meet.
So lucky.
And the preliminary design, yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah,
It may retire a week
preliminary
early.
design review
Can you hang in for?
and associated questions. So that might take a little bit extra time and we'll be in the council chambers.
The public meeting will be right there.
How much is in your district?
Well, part of it,
The part that's getting redone though,
part, yeah,
isn't it? Bell Farm, up toward Bell Farm?
it's just the little stretch, yes. I mean, it's still exciting. Most of it is in.
Job stick.
Yeah.
We're very grateful